Well, good evening, everybody. I want to visit with you a little bit about the April 2024 eclipse from an Arkansas AuxComm perspective. We've started planning for our response to that. I am the AuxComm ESF2 liaison officer for the Arkansas Division of Emergency Management, also the chair of the Arkansas COMU Working Group, and I'm a member of the Arkansas Wireless Information Network Policy and Technology Working Groups and a member of the AWIN Executive Committee as well. I'm also an at-large member of SafeCom, which is the federal guys that need advice real bad, as our man Steve Waterman will tell you. And I hold the call signs N5XFW NND6EM unless they've taken it away from me today. And also got a GMRS license, WRVE 655, because we will be using those guys as well. Now, what we're talking about is the upcoming eclipse. You can see the path of the 2017 eclipse that passed through the continental United States. Is the first one in 118. Then, did you? The 2017 path there, and I want you to take note that the path in 2017 is much narrower than the path in 2024. So we're expecting a lot bigger crowd to be in that area, and that's just part of it. So we looked at the states of Wyoming and South Carolina because that was the most rural state was Wyoming, and then South Carolina had probably the largest ham radio response. And so we wanted to look at those to find some do's and don'ts from both, and hopefully come up with a fair plan that does the best we can with what we have here. Just a little bit of history: the 2017 Eclipse was the first one to traverse the continental United States since 1918. The communities across the nation in 2017 uniformly faced logistical nightmares due to just the huge number of tourists. What they saw was that agencies did not believe their population was going to increase in the way that it did, and therefore just didn't plan. And as we all know, if you fail to plan, that is the same thing as planning to fail. Some areas did prepare for a Super Bowl like event, and those events sometimes lasted 10 days. Now, these events are slow to ramp up because people take 10 days or better to get there, have a big camp out, lots of hoo ha and carry on. But then when the lights go out, or when the lights come back on, rather, everybody wants to leave right then. And that's where we have a large traffic problem, if nothing else. And in the meantime, you've got all the logistical problems of where do people buy their food, where do they get their gasoline, where do they go to the bathroom. We're seriously concerned that there's just not enough porta potties in the United States to be able to take care of all this. So uh, in Arkansas, oh, well, I missed a slide here. Yeah, no, we did that. Okay, here we go. Now in Arkansas, now I want you to think about what's going on in your state because we're not the only state. This thing comes into the continent in Mexico, travels across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, up through there, and exits the continent at Nova Scotia. So it's a big, long thing. You can use this slideshow as something to think about in your state, by the way. We are working very hand in hand with Texas, Oklahoma states, by the way, as we start this planning process. In Arkansas, we've got several linked repeater systems, 2 meter and 440, that cover the state, bigger part of it. There's also a statewide GMRS repeater link system with several voting simulcast repeaters, by the way. We have a very robust and experienced Skywarn group in all 5 of our county warning areas. There's Tulsa, Springfield, Memphis, Jackson, Mississippi, Shreveport, Louisiana, as well as Little Rock. So all those guys are experienced. So we've got those that we can call on, and we will be calling on them. We're praying for good weather, but we just don't know. You might think about that for a minute. You know, what happens if we have tornadoes run across Arkansas on April the 8th? That would not be as good a deal as we want it to be, for sure. So things we've got in process and that we're working on right now is we're working on coverage maps for the counties in the area of the totality, not only ham radio, but the GMRS as well as the public safety. We want to know what the coverage is for the Arkansas Wireless Information Network, which is a statewide P25 7800 trunk system that we just want to see where their potential issues are that might be that we could do something about, whether it's putting a sow, a side on wheels there for the A-Win system, or maybe some portable ham repeaters, something that if we find something that's that big, we don't think we will, unless it's down in the some of the valleys up in North Arkansas specifically, like along in the Buffalo River Valley. We just don't know what we're going to find about that yet. We're also we're looking to identify some fox hunters here in Arkansas that we might could send to an area where somebody's doing some intentional interference. That was something that they took note of in South Carolina, was that there was some of that stuff going on. Some miscreants were causing a little bit of problem, and so we want to get ahead of that and have these guys ready to go. One of our other challenges is finding operators here in the state that are willing to travel. I'm hoping that we can have the governor declare an emergency that would release some state money and maybe even some federal money that we could help these guys with travel a little bit. We're also working to integrate hams into emergency management. And one of the things that we're having them do, or that we're asking them to do rather, is to get their incident command classes done. We ask them to do 100, 200, 700, and 800. And then as well, if they have the time, we're doing AuxComm. We've got AuxComm class scheduled. I'm one of 2 AuxComm instructors here in the state of Arkansas. I've got my first class, first state-sponsored class here in April the 1st and 2nd, and that's not an April Fool's joke. The next thing we're doing is defining roles and responsibility for everyone that wants to help, whether it's going to be you're going to be a net controller for this area, whether you're going to be doing traffic control, not traffic control. We're not going to do anything law enforcement style, but maybe do some situational awareness stuff. We're going to make sure that everybody's got a job and there's a job for everybody. I can just guarantee that. So some of the stuff that we have to think about is care and feeding. If we do have individuals or teams that can be deployed, we have to make sure that they're taken care of. I insist that people are well taken care of, because I might want to use them again sometime. If they've got a bad taste in their mouth about the deal, or they were treated poorly, they're not going to want to come back. And that's just something that you know ahead of time, and you just need to make arrangements for it. We're developing those coverage maps, both 2 meters and 440, as well as the A-Win, and probably we will do some of the other legacy systems for the public safety groups, like the county sheriffs and what have you, such as that. Identifying and scheduling those watch operators. Everybody's been to a ham fest or an event where you had a talk-in operator that told you where to go and what have you. We believe that there will be several people coming from outside our area that will want directions, and it'll be a really nice thing to do to have a talk-in operator that can help those guys come along. Not everybody, I don't know how you guys are, but in Arkansas, every now and again, your GPS will lie to you and make you turn off into the woods where you didn't want to. Some of the things that we're also thinking about is we're considering all these linked repeaters. Maybe we want to make them standalone to reduce the operator fatigue. And one of the things, what we're concerned about there is that if it's a large area repeater, that some one individual might not be able to deal with the sheer volume of calls for assistance that he might receive. So that's something we're going to have to work with, and we're going to have to deal with that on the fly, I'm afraid. But we want to be prepared. Since we've thought of it, we want to see what we can do about that. And we're for sure going to be integrating those Skywarn people and their systems because, believe it or not, Arkansas does have tornadoes, and we are very sure that if we don't prepare for it, it will happen. And so we want to make those guys ready. And we're working with the uh, warning coordination meteorologists at each of those uh, weather service offices that I mentioned earlier, because every one of them talks on AWIND to tell the uh, responders in Arkansas what's coming at them and all that kind of stuff. So we have to make sure that everybody knows what's going to be happening on those different talk groups. So there's more things that we want to think about, and what triggers that we can define for the ham radio operator so that they don't have to make a lot of decisions, or maybe guess what it was that we intended for them to do. And that's who notifies who of what, when, and how. And hopefully we can get that stuff written down and passed out in time. They tell us that we're going to be a lot of printing cards, and hopefully we get those passed out. The right person gets the right card. That would just be a great thing. Also, we're curious to see, and we haven't heard anything really. Will there be a nationwide or a regional amateur radio response? We're not hearing anything out of ARRL yet. However, I have talked to Josh Johnson several times about this, and it's just a matter of we just don't know. They're not really equipped to mount that sort of an effort on this big a this big an area, moving target, as it were, like that. So we're just going to have to see what comes out. And so we expect also that there's going to be some special event stations happen around. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I'm hoping that that does not decrease my pool of available operators too much. But I know that there's been some talk about special event station in places, and we'll just see what goes on. And another thing that we've been talking about is, what if we just don't do anything at all? And I don't, what if we just ignore that the notified, just forget that the eclipse is going to happen at all? And I don't think that that's a viable thing for us to do. And I believe that, again, failure to plan is the same thing as planning to fail. So we're going to work at this and do our best, and hopefully it'll come around. Just so you know, just an aside, a lot of the quartz that was used for crystals was mined here in Arkansas, World War I, World War II, for the crystal radios. And the biggest supply of quartz in the North America is in two counties here in Arkansas, both of them in the area of the totality. One's here in Garland County, where I happen to live, and the other one is just immediately to my west in Montgomery County. Now, that is all in the Ouachita National Forest. And so when you think about we call them crystal people, those are the folks that really enjoy crystals and all the good things that they do for them. They're going to be out there in the woods just willy-nilly. And the Forest Service is not telling us yet what their response is going to be, whether they're going to try to run those guys off or not. I can remember back in the early 70s, middle 70s, when the what they call those guys, the rainbow people, were out there camping around. They had their rendezvous, and the Forest Service mainly left them alone, except for when they were setting fires and causing uh, uh, garbage heaps and what have you. Then they kind of got upset with them, but we don't know what was going to happen yet with those guys in the forest. So it's yet to be seen, but we have to plan for the number of people that are going to show up. Doesn't matter where they are. So I believe that ham radio can be a huge benefit to our community through the response to the eclipse, because everybody, every person, every public safety person that we can turn loose from a duty that we can do benefits the public, because there's just not enough sheriff's deputies to go around. There's not enough state troopers. There's not enough ambulance personnel. So whatever we can do to help, I think will benefit our community. Some of the things that we might do is first aid station coordination, situational awareness kind of thing. Ham radio operator can tell back to somebody how many people are injured and in the first aid station, and what they might be doing as far as needing to be transported, or they're just going to have to stay there for a little while, cool off, get out of the sun. Maybe, well, getting out of the sun ought to be pretty easy during the eclipse, I think, Dan. They also might be watching traffic just for situational awareness. I don't believe we're going to have any of them directing traffic. That'd be a little bit outside our purview. But I am sure that each and every one of you can think of other things that ham radio operators might be able and willing to do, just on and on. So our last thing that I'm trying to do here is to get volunteer ham radio operators treated as an employee. In other words, what I'm working on is workman's compensation insurance that would be delivered by the county or whoever is the um, beneficiary of those ham radio operators to provide them workman's comp. As it is here in the state of Arkansas, volunteer firemen are given workman's compensation if they happen to get injured in a fire, given that they meet the requirements to be a fireman and duly on duty and all that good stuff. A lot of things, a lot of paperwork has to be done on the front end. There's a lot of controversy here in Arkansas on how that would work and what it would look like. I'm also looking to get them reimbursed if they, for any expense that would be um, reasonable, like a hotel room at the government rate, of course. Maybe mileage if we send them somewhere. I think that we ought to do our best to help them out a little bit. It doesn't make much sense to me to charge a volunteer to do a good job, and that's just my thought about the deal. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll always thought that it should have. So there you go. I'm also looking at the law that Colorado has that mandates that sort of thing, that they be treated as an employee while they're deployed or in use, and that they're treated as if they were on duty and therefore eligible for reimbursements. So that's what we're doing there. So I want you to know that we've just started thinking about this stuff here. I think we had a meeting with the federal government guys that are trying to coordinate between the states, and we've had the communications unit has had two meetings where we thought of things that we needed to think of, needed to start solving problems. And then today we talked about divvying those tasks up and making sure that we had those tasks recorded that we wanted to try to solve. One of the things that we ran up against first shot out of the box was that we don't know who the incident commander will be, and it is difficult to write as a COML. It's very difficult to write a communications plan without hearing what it is that the incident commander wants done. And so we're kind of we're doing our preliminary work. And then when that incident commander can talk to us and explain to us what's going to go on, then we can finalize our plan. There are several people that may be called on to be the incident commander. We've got we use a cabinet style of government here in Arkansas, where the governor appoints cabinet secretaries, and we suspect that the Secretary of Public Safety will be the incident commander sooner than later. He's a state trooper. It was a captain with the state police, and then when we changed governors, he's now the secretary. So we'll just have to see what goes on. All that'll be rolled up. All that plan, once we get it, will be rolled up into the incident action plan, and we will work with everybody in the planning section to make sure that everything meshes, and hopefully we'll have a plan that we can be proud of when it comes time. Now, while we're doing that, our plans are going to be shared with the other states. As I said, Oklahoma and Texas. We want to make it as smooth as possible because this thing moves, and we want what goes on in Texas. We want to learn from it at the last minute. When it comes through Oklahoma, we want to know about what goes on with them that did and didn't work, and be able to shift so that Arkansas looks better than what Texas and Oklahoma did. By the time it gets up northeast of us, everything ought to be just slick as it can be. And so if we can make this work, we're hoping that our agencies here in the state will want to use the ham radio operators more often. We've kind of sort of lost touch with emergency communications here in the state of Arkansas because things just haven't happened like they do in some of the other states where ham radio operators are utilized on a much more often basis. And I'm thinking about North and South Carolina, and Florida, Louisiana, where those hurricanes come on board and tear up Jack. We haven't had that sort of a large scale thing that ham radio operators were all that necessary for any length of time whatsoever. When a tornado runs through, ham radio might be important. They're important before ham radio is to do the Skywarn stuff. And so far, the Arkansas Wireless Information Network has been very robust and easily augmented with the SOWs, so that we could put up a we could fill a gap if we had one right away. And so that's our statement right now, is that we're just going to see what we can learn, and hopefully we can adjust on the fly as we go through. So here's my contact information. If anybody's got any ideas that I would be interested in looking at, I would sure be happy to hear from you. That the top address is my state address, and then I've got a Yahoo address, and because I was a section manager at one time, I've got a.org and a .net address, and sometimes those work. So that's what I've got. Dan, I'm ready for questions.
Sounds good. And
there's one good one from chat.
Questions. Anybody got their hands up?
I got a good one from chat.
Okay, go for it.
This is from Loretta in California. If a fox hunter actually finds someone deliberately causing interference with communications, what do they do about it?
So what our plan is right now is that probably we'll call a state trooper and have him go visit with him and ask him why he's being a bad boy. And if that doesn't cure the problem, I don't know what we're going to do. We have not yet decided that we're going to turn his electricity off, but there's all kinds of things that we can do for him. But we intend on appealing to their better nature, and if that doesn't work, we'll do something else.
And we can't really talk about what that something else is because we get in trouble.
That's exactly right. Yep. Don't want to prepare anybody.
Jay, I want you to lower your desktop.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Does that do it?
Not yet.
I don't know what I'm doing, Dan.
No, you got it.
Is that it? Okay.
That gives you more visible spot and does us too.
Okay.
So out there. Looking for questions. Anything in chat there, Barry? Wait a minute. Here's Peter in 6ERL. He's got his hand up. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, interesting talk, and I'll just quickly relay my experience during the 2017 eclipse. I was drove to John Day, Oregon, and found myself on top of a hill by myself for the first day. And by the time the eclipse came around, there were at least 40 or 50 people, vehicles on top of that hill, and this was in a national forest. And the cool thing was the local ham radio club did a twice, or no, actually it was 3 times a day call-in net for any amateur operators that were there in their area to watch the eclipse. And they were asking everybody what their location was. And so they were keeping a map with pins in it to show where all of the hams in the area were, so that if anything were to have occurred, and what might have occurred in that area was a forest fire, for example, they would at least have some idea of knowing where people were and could make calls to those folks and warn them of what was going on. And then, of course, when when the eclipse was over, you're absolutely correct. I mean, it is like a mad dash for the exits. And that's when the traffic reporting becomes very useful. And of course, in my case, I just stayed an extra day. That solved the problem for me. But that was my experience with that eclipse. And it's a wonderful event. If you've never experienced it, it's well worth it. But try to find a spot where you're high enough above everything so you get the full effect. Anyway, that's all I've got.
It just happens that my home here is in the path of the totality, and there's been talk of doing Airbnb for the night for the house here, and I don't know if we're going to do that or not, but that's a deal. I mean, we're in a good spot right here. I'm in the middle of 50 acres, and so we're in a good place right here. I'd like to answer one from the chat. It says right now developing your 217A, and that's exactly what we've been doing here. We've got them done for the southwest corner of Arkansas so far. The guy that is doing that's Bobby King, W5LVB. We call him Low Voltage Bob, and he's one of the best COMLs that we have available to us, and he is for sure got that going on. Of course, we know every talk group that is in the AWIN, Arkansas Wireless Information Network category, and we've got access to all of those except for the law enforcement stuff. We're ready for that kind of thing. There's another one here that what role does the Arkansas National Guard play for this eclipse event? And as we have seen in storm events, specifically the winter storm stuff, they worked with Arkansas State Police getting to places that your regular vehicles couldn't go using their Humvees and what have you. And that's one of the uses that we're doing with the GMRS stuff is those Jeep clubs that use that GMRS and this statewide network of repeaters that they've got going on. We're thinking that maybe that they could be sent to carry the baby's diapers. I don't, whatever it is that we need doing, we're going to hopefully be able to dispatch them. APRS is very big here in Arkansas, by the way. We've got a bunch of digipeaters and gateways around, and we will most assuredly be utilizing all that technology that we can come across. As we saw in the Region 4, Region 6 exercise that took place earlier, well, last year, I guess, was it last year? Steve can tell us. We were able to do mapping with that thing if you used one of the WinLink position specific forms, and we can put that on a map and display that in the EOC there at the Arkansas Division of Emergency Management. It proved to be quite useful. We may do that as well if we have the opportunity to. I don't know. What else we got? More questions?
Okay, I don't
This
see.
is Gene, N3XUS in Texas. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Texas Races here in Texas. And I'm just wondering if there is a role specific for this event that races across state lines are going to coordinate and work through, or is each state on their own as far as planning, coordinating, and responding to this? It's a pretty broad question.
Well, but I can answer it. By the way, that's something that our SWICs or statewide interoperability coordinators are going to be working through. And because I sit with our SWIC regularly and attend the meetings with her, we will certainly be asking that kind of a question. Carla Jurens there in Texas is a friend of mine, as well as Nikki Dallas in Oklahoma. And so with those three ladies, it just happens that I'm the thorn in the bed of roses kind of thing when we get together. But we all think alike, and we will certainly plan for involvement of amateur radio operators passing one to another what's going on and the types of problems they've seen and what they didn't think of ahead of time. And again, we will be working. Each of us will know what our others' plans are, so that we can hopefully integrate that all into a seamless, cohesive, single, integrated operational plan. And that's
All
my
right,
big
thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Yes, sir.
JM,
Yes.
I have a comment on one of the questions.
I want you guys to know this is what Bobby King W5LVB looks like.
I can turn it off. Stan from Wisconsin says, good presentation. Glad to see teams planning a year in advance. Just so you understand what we've already got started a little bit deeper, my county, by emergency management standards, every county has to have their own exercise each year. They have to have at least one that represents the stuff that's going on in that particular county to keep their funding through the state for their emergency manager reimbursements. I scheduled a tabletop exercise based on the eclipse for April the 6th of this year. Same week, same month that the eclipse is going to occur in 1 year. And we're having a tabletop exercise. The basis of that exercise is communications. We will have all peoples represented, law enforcement, fire, state parks, U.S. parks, EMS, amateur radio, you name it, they're all invited to this exercise. And the topic of the exercise is the interoperable communications. What do you understand what your system is capable of? Do you understand what it's not capable of? And how are we going to apply that to build our 205 and our comms plan based on what we have available off the 217, and see if they understand the concept a year in advance and all. And then we will apply what we learn in the tabletop exercise to what's going to happen, at least in our local area. And we're hoping that the other counties and the other jurisdictions in the affected area read our AAR when we're done with it and understand what we've tried to accomplish and what some of our sticking points were. But who turned off the sun is going to happen April 6th, and we'll see how that exercise goes.
So I guess we need to explain a little bit, Bobby, what a 205 and a 217 is there. So a 217 is the communications assets that are available, all the repeaters and frequencies and simplex channels, everything. And then 205 is the actual plan that you would use depending on what assets are available in what area and how they communicate on a daily basis in the first place, and how those communications would be affected by this event. And so, for instance, we will group people that are doing the same function. In other words, traffic will be on a talk group. Um, Law enforcement will be on a talk group for a particular area. The EMS will be working on a talk group such as that. And so we group them not by area as much as we do by function. And by doing that, we can have a single dispatcher take care of a single uh, function over a very large area. We learned that that's one of the premises in ComL when you take that course, and we've learned that. So another thing is that we're really interested in getting messages back to. Thank you, Barry, for making me remember that. We're very interested in getting messages into and out of the emergency management agencies without using the telephone network, because if the population of Arkansas doubles, which is what they think, we don't have enough cell phone service here to be able to do that. And we sure don't have enough internet. So I am just certain that we're going to be relying on RF, and hopefully we've got enough of that to go around. So I hope that answered that question.
Dan's got your hand up. Dan? Hello, Dan.
I was muted the way you like me to be. So listening to the presentation, I realized I didn't have a clue. This is a little ways from, planning an IAP and 205s, 217s, whatever. But I have no idea what happens in a full eclipse to the solar flux index and HF propagation. Do any of you know what happens just for those few minutes at a given location? That is
It's like
fully
it's
eclipsed?
nighttime.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Dan, if I understand correctly, what's going to happen is that it'll be like night, but for a short period of time. So our HF stuff will change over time, and that's one of the big reasons that we're trying to shy away from the HF as much as we can, because we don't want to have to because the area of totality is moving. It'll be difficult for a base operator to keep up with what would the changing conditions in the field. And so we're hoping to be able to use our 2-meter and our 440 networks as much as possible in any case to be able to get that done. Does that make sense?
throw down the challenge to some amateur radio clubs that are into it to do a gray line chase on the eclipse.
Yeah, I mean, that may be one of the special event things that go on. I mean, that'd be cool. Sure would.
Well,
Thank you for your question.
Godspeed with this, because if I remember correctly, in Wyoming, the population was roughly 500,000, and more than 1 million people showed up for the eclipse.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And
The saving grace at
the
saving grace that Wyoming had was there's not a lot of population in a lot of the property that was in the area of totality. The bad thing was they didn't have a lot of trees.
Good luck, and come back and tell us about the tabletop exercise.
Sure will. We'll get Bobby to make a presentation. Diane wanted to know, can the WinLink map function show gray line as it moves across the country? And I'm not, I don't know anything about that for sure, but probably we can learn that from Steve Waterman at some point, I'd suspect.
Some of the DX spotting networks show grain line maps as they move across the country.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm curious. That's not that's a calculated thing. I think, not an observational thing. I don't know how they would do that with a moving shadow, but I'm sure there's some smart guys somewhere that can figure that out. So it'd be
They do
interesting
it
to
right
see.
now. I can follow the gray line on this DX spotting map as it goes across the country.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking of some of the work they've done in California with WinLink and tracking propagation. So it seemed kind of fun if we were going to have a major event, a little national event. So that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It'd be interested to
Steve
see.
Waterman posted a URL for a study that's doing just that.
Okay.
Okay, Monty, you got your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jam. I think, Dan, your propagation between two locations in general, it kind of depends largely on what's in between them. And so from areas inside the dark zone to areas outside the dark zone, I would think it wouldn't make much difference. Also, the period of totality is so short that you're not really going to have time for the F-flare to converge and all that sort of thing. So any unusual propagation conditions on HF, I would think would be mostly local. That's just my estimate.
Exactly.
I can say from my experience,
And local, you use ground wave anyway.
my experience from the last go around is it's fun, it's neat, but it doesn't last very long. And if you're going to chase that, you're going to be a busy boy or girl.
Yeah, you might check the HAMSCI, HAMSCI site, because I think they did some experimentation or collected anecdotal information on the 2017 one.
All right. Are there any more hands to go up? Any more messages, questions, and texts?
Fred wants to know for limited members, where do you station them? Well, Fred, that's the $1 million question right there. That's one of the things that we're going to have to figure out. Depends a lot on what we identify as a gap. There's so many rural areas here in Arkansas that could use somebody, just paying attention and being able to report whatever situation they might see, till we don't know what we're going to do yet. I mean, it just, I don't know what availability of operators I've got. So that's what's going to happen.
For those raising their hand, I want to appreciate you guys. It keeps the confusion down, everything else by doing that. Appreciate you raising your hand rather than just jumping in. Peter, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Just a quick comment, and that is, if you've never been through one of these total eclipses, during the eclipse, your attention is going to be completely focused on the eclipse. And to think about doing other things during the eclipse, if it's your first one, might not be the best idea, because it's a really magical experience. And to try to do more than one thing during it, it's so short that that's just my experience. So take it for what it's worth.
Good information.
Man, this one's supposed to be shorter and narrower.
Yeah, I did the last one from our cabin. It's in the mountains of Idaho. And when it went dark, it was just like, all the animals thought it was nighttime. They all switched to night mode, if you will. And for the short period of time it was there, it is an interesting experience. And I doubt seriously most of the hams that's experienced it will want to sit there at their radio try and chase that thing when they got a one-in-a-lifetime experience, time to actually experience. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I was just wondering, JM, if you know whether some of your adjacent states, I'm interested in Missouri in particular, are making similar preparations or plans.
The thing doesn't touch Missouri very much, but I know that, and we're not in contact with them as much yet, but we intend on visiting with all our contiguous states to make sure that if there's any anything we can help them with, we will.
Yeah, okay,
That-
great. Yeah, I know
that
it goes
kind
through
of
the boot heel, and my wife has relatives there, so wanted to give them an idea of what they should prepare for.
Yeah, tell them to be ready to rent their house out, I think. So
Thanks.
one of the things that they tell us here to expect is that every little airstrip is going to have a jet parked on it that came from Asia or South America or wherever. One of the things that happened to them in the 2017 is that everywhere in the path of totality ran out of jet fuel, which we just hadn't thought of that. So,
Hmm.
yay.
Well, hang on for a second here, Brent. I might comment, when it came through Idaho, one of our counties, Boise County, it's a very mountainous region, and their main repeater for the sheriff's department is in the same building, operating off the same solar power as the amateur radio repeater we have. And for some reason, it just died. And they had to rely upon the hams up there for some time till they got somebody up there to figure out what was wrong, get it going again. And once they got it going again, the police department, they say, hey, we get more out of the hams we do from our own office. So at any rate, it was a blessing in disguise. We were there and made it all work, but be prepared for almost anything can happen. Brent, go ahead.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm just curious what you feel is the best way to actually see this. I saw the 2017 one, and of course you couldn't look up at it with your bare eyes, but I was wondering, can you use your cell phone to look at it later, or is it what's the best suggestion you have for that? And I really enjoyed this. It was really great. Thank you.
Well, I think I intend on recording the thing so that I can go back and look at it, but I'm almost certain that I'm going to have my head down, trying to figure something else out, during this, but they sell, glasses, that you can look at it, and, welding helmets and all that. I mean, there'll be people out there, holding their finger up to their eye kind of stuff, which isn't a good idea, but, there's just no end of people that are going to sell you stuff, and I expect to be seeing that stuff on Amazon anytime now.
You can also make a pinhole camera. It works quite well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we when it happened to Idaho, that stuff is by the tons, and we also use the lens, if you will, from one of those glasses. The glasses were cheap, like $6 for $6 or whatever. Didn't start out that way, but as we got closer, we put the lens over the camera, and that seemed to work pretty good too.
Be sure your hospital emergency rooms prepared for eye injuries, because people will look at the sun unprepared and they'll get eye injuries.
That's right.
I know when that last one went through in 2017, there were a lot of accidents in our area, and just amazing the amount of car accidents and truck accidents, because it just surprised everybody. But a great presentation. Really enjoyed this tonight. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you, JR. Appreciate this.
I'd like to thank you guys for the ideas that you've brought here tonight, and the ideas that you're going to bring, and especially the ideas that will come when this comes on the YouTube. I'd really appreciate you guys sharing this around if you have the opportunity to, because we are no kidding looking for ideas, because we want to get it right the first time.
Okay, anybody else? Been a great presentation. I'm going to say 73-31.